I am 63. A few weeks ago, I had a contractor come out to my house in Scottsdale to look at a massive 80-gallon commercial water heater that was failing. The unit was only 4 years old and it was pulling a massive amount of electricity, but every single morning the water was barely lukewarm. I assumed the internal heating elements were completely burned out. The contractor did not even test the electrical panel. He hooked a hose to the base, drained the tank, and pulled the bottom valve completely off. He shined a flashlight inside and asked me to look. The bottom of that steel tank was packed with almost 8 inches of hard, thick, calcified sediment from the local hard water. The heating elements were firing at maximum capacity all night long, burning an incredible amount of energy, but the heat could not penetrate the rock. The energy was just getting trapped and absorbed by the sediment. The system was running itself to death, but it was completely incapable of actually building and holding a charge for the next day. I stood in the garage looking at that exhausted, inefficient piece of machinery, and I felt a very familiar sense of frustration. Because looking at that tank trying to build a reserve and failing was exactly like looking at the internal mechanics of my own body about 10 years ago. For the vast majority of my adult life, I treated my internal energy like it was an infinite resource. I spent decades working as a corporate sales executive, managing massive territories, living out of rental cars, and running on a continuous loop of adrenaline and pressure. I operated under the absolute assumption that human biology was just a simple battery. I believed that it did not matter how hard I ran the engine during the day, as long as I closed my eyes for 6 or 7 hours at night, the system would automatically reset and be ready to perform the next morning. I never considered the actual mechanical process of how a human body rebuilds its power. When I crossed into my mid-50s, that automatic reset completely stopped happening. It was not a sudden collapse or a medical emergency. It was a slow, heavy draining of my baseline vitality. I started waking up at 5 in the morning feeling like I had just finished a 12-hour shift. My legs felt like they were filled with wet concrete when I tried to walk up a simple flight of stairs. A deep, hollow exhaustion settled into my chest and refused to leave. But the most humiliating part, the part that fundamentally dismantled my understanding of my own manhood, happened behind closed doors. The automatic physical response that makes intimacy possible, the unforced rush of blood that tells a man his machinery is working, became incredibly weak. And then it became almost non-existent. When your body refuses to hold a charge and respond to your own intentions, the silence that follows is suffocating. You do not just lose a physical capability, you lose your footing in the world. You lose that quiet, unspoken confidence that allows you to walk into a room, look people in the eye, and feel like a man who actually owns his space. I handled that physical failure exactly the way generations of men are quietly trained to handle it. I buried it and I hid from it. I started engineering my entire evening routine to avoid my wife at the time. I would find an excuse to stay out in the driveway cleaning the interior of my car, or I would sit in my home office staring at a blank computer screen until I knew the house was completely dark and she was asleep. I convinced myself I was just giving us space because the stress of my corporate job was too high. But the absolute truth was that I was terrified. I was terrified of walking into the bedroom and trying to initiate something, because I knew the signal from my brain was simply not going to translate into physical power. The tank was completely empty. The emotional distance that builds up in a house when a man refuses to speak about his failing machinery is incredibly toxic. It creates a cold, heavy atmosphere that slowly suffocates everything good in the relationship. You think you are protecting your pride by staying quiet, but you are actually just leaving your partner in the dark, making them wonder what they did wrong to make you pull away. The divorce that eventually happened in my 50s was a complex failure, but my absolute refusal to look under the hood and address my own physical breakdown was the heavy anchor that dragged it down. Living alone in a sterile apartment a couple of years later, tired of waking up every single day feeling like a ghost, I decided I was going to find out exactly why my system could no longer hold a charge. I absolutely refused to go to a men's clinic and ask for a synthetic prescription. I understood exactly how those chemical pills operated. They are the biological equivalent of pouring lighter fluid onto a dying fire. They force the system open through massive artificial blunt force for a few hours. But they do not fix the infrastructure, and they do not actually restore your vitality. If you apply massive artificial pressure to a damaged, exhausted system often enough, eventually the underlying machinery is going to completely shatter. I wanted to fix the battery itself. I started doing my own reading. I looked past the generic health advice and started researching the actual cellular mechanics of how the male body recovers from chronic stress. I read about how the nervous system governs blood volume, vascular repair, and energy storage. What I found forced me to rethink everything I knew about sleep and recovery. I learned that my problem was not a lack of testosterone or a lack of desire. My problem was a severe mechanical lock in my nervous system. When a man spends decades living on adrenaline and pressure, his sympathetic nervous system, the biological gear responsible for fight or flight, gets stuck in the on position. It literally forgets how to power down. I was going to sleep, but my nervous system was still firing at maximum capacity all night long. It was exactly like that calcified water heater. I was burning massive amounts of internal energy while I slept, fighting an invisible threat, so the battery could never actually recharge. I was waking up empty because I was running the engine all night. Furthermore, I discovered that when the sympathetic nervous system is locked on, the body keeps a steady stream of cortisol pumping through the veins. Cortisol is a stress hormone that physically constricts blood vessels. It tightens the pipes to prepare for physical combat, so my delivery lines were clamped shut 24 hours a day. The blood could not flow, and the microscopic damage inside the arteries was never getting repaired. I realized I did not need a stimulant or a chemical sledgehammer. I needed a biological brake pad. I needed something that could physically force the nervous system to shift out of the sympathetic gear, power down the engine, and let the cells actually absorb a charge while I slept. I found the answer in an incredibly basic foundational mineral that endurance workers use to force their bodies into deep recovery after extreme exertion. I am not talking about the cheap, chalky supplements you buy at a grocery store that just act as a laxative. I am talking about a highly specific, bioavailable compound called magnesium glycinate. When I looked at the actual biological mechanics of it, it made perfect structural sense. The magnesium acts as the core mineral for cellular repair, but the glycine is an amino acid that acts as an inhibitory neurotransmitter. When you combine them, they act as a physical off switch for the brain. The glycinate binds to the overactive nerve receptors and physically blocks the stress signals. It forces the nervous system to drop the idle, relax the tense, smooth muscle tissue inside the blood vessels, and actually shut down. It clears the sediment out of the tank so the heat can actually build. I decided to run a rigid test on my own internal machinery. I ordered a jar of pure magnesium glycinate powder. The protocol was incredibly simple. Every single night, exactly 30 minutes before I intended to go to sleep, I went into the kitchen. I poured a small glass of water, about 6 ounces. I took exactly 1 measured scoop of the magnesium glycinate powder, stirred it until the water was clear, and drank it down. I did not feel a sudden heavy chemical sedation. It does not knock you unconscious like a sleeping pill. It just creates a slow, quiet dropping of internal tension. I kept doing it. Every single night. Water, magnesium glycinate, swallow, go to bed. About 2 weeks into this new routine, the shift happened. I woke up at 6 in the morning, and before I even opened my eyes, I realized something was missing. The heavy, suffocating weight on my chest was gone. My mind was completely clear, not fighting through a thick fog. When I stood up, my legs felt remarkably light. The deep, hollow fatigue that I thought was just a permanent part of aging was simply not there. The brake pad was working. Because I was finally letting my nervous system shut down at night, my body was finally able to use its resources to repair the vascular pathways and store actual energy. And then, about 10 days after that, the undeniable proof arrived. I woke up in the dark, hours before dawn, and the system was fully online. The baseline physical response, the unforced, natural reaction that proves a man's delivery lines are completely clear and his battery is charged, was there. It was not a faint, weak signal. It was strong, holding steady pressure. The pipe was completely open and the power was fully restored. I lay there looking at the ceiling and I felt a sharp, heavy wave of anger. I was furious that I had wasted years of my life hiding from intimacy, destroying my own home, and letting my confidence erode into absolute nothing, all because I did not understand that my nervous system was just stuck in the wrong gear. I had surrendered my pride over a mechanical restriction that could be fixed by simply flipping the switch before bed. But that anger burned off quickly, and what rushed in to replace it was a profound, quiet relief. Because I finally understood that I was not a permanently broken man. The engine was perfectly fine. I just needed to let it recharge. My reality today is fundamentally different. I am married to Alyssa now. She's a woman who expects complete presence and emotional honesty, and she does not let me hide in the shadows. When you share a life with a partner who actually looks at you, you have to be able to show up. You have to have the internal bandwidth to stand your ground. And when your body actually works, when it has the vitality to respond to your intentions without hesitation, the background anxiety of your life completely evaporates. You stop overthinking every touch. You stop dreading the quiet moments at the end of the day. You just participate in your own life with a steady, quiet capability. I still drink that exact same glass of water every single night, 30 minutes before bed. Water, 1 scoop of magnesium glycinate, I swallow it before I turn out the lights. I do it because I understand exactly what it is doing inside my infrastructure. It is guaranteeing that the nervous system powers down, the blood vessels relax, and the battery actually holds a charge for the next day. I am not telling you that drinking a mineral powder is going to save you if you refuse to take care of the rest of your life. If you are drinking a bottle of wine every night, eating highly processed garbage all day long, and carrying 50 pounds of unmanaged weight on your frame, your system is going to fail, and no nighttime routine on earth will reverse it. You still have to do the heavy lifting. You have to move your body, manage your daily stress, and act like a man who actually intends to survive. But I am telling you this. Many of you are sitting in your cars right now, looking at the steering wheel, thinking that your time as a physically capable man is permanently over. You are sleeping on the far edge of the mattress, creating distance from the woman you love because you believe your machinery is completely dead. You are probably not dead. Your internal system is likely just locked in a state of constant tension, burning its own reserves 24 hours a day without ever getting a chance to recover. You do not have to accept the physical silence and the heavy exhaustion as your permanent reality. If you are a man over 50, understanding how to force your own nervous system to shut down is the only way you retain your authority. Start looking at the invisible burden you are placing on your own internal battery. Consider what happens when you finally stop trying to run the engine continuously. Apply the right biological brake and let the vitality return to where it belongs.